everybody. Welcome to Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I am your host, Keely, Eure, joined alongside Ryan Abraham for today's show. We are missing Shotgun Spratling. He couldn't make it today, so we're down one, but it's just Ryan and I. We're a good duo, right, Ryan?
Yeah, the surfboard will be Shotgun for today.
That's true. It does the same job.
He's got to work at his other job. He's doing some stuff. So it'll just be me and Keely today breaking down the game.
Yes, a dynamic duo indeed. But like Ryan said, we will be breaking down USC's 39-36 victory over the Washington State Cougars. We'll be talking about USC's offensive performance, JT Daniels connecting with those wide receivers, and also maybe some defensive concerns, though we didn't see the best defensive performance from the Trojans, so we'll be getting into that. And of course, we will be answering your questions. I believe we are triple casting, a triangle cast, if you will.
My Periscope doesn't seem to be, I think it's working. It looks like we're broadcasting on all.
Yeah, It looks like we're broadcasting on all, which is exciting. So we'll be monitoring your comments there, YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Periscope. So make sure you get your questions in. We'll answer them.
I'll try to pull it up over here too.
And it was a Friday night game, so we've had a couple of hours in between. Usually we have a quick turnaround for this show, but we have some time. Ryan, what were your thoughts? You were kind of a little bit away from it. What are your thoughts about the game?
Yeah, a little bit of time. I got to, I know we both did non-football things yesterday on Saturday, which is great. You got to see Beyonce. I played a golf tournament and hung out with some friends. But so you get a little time to decompress. I haven't rewatched the game yet, so just only from the view of the press box. And yeah, it was interesting. I think overall, there's still a lot of fans that are upset with the way things are going. They don't like, what's going on. Clay Helton was pretty upbeat. I think it's a big, important win for this team. I know it was close. The defense has never given up. USC defense has never given up that many points to Washington State ever, and they've played. This is their 74th time playing. But the offense got going again, and we got to see some good stuff around the ball with Akacentric Ware banged up a little bit. You saw a lot of Stephen Carr and Vavae Malapei, and they both thought they looked good. So there were definitely some positives you can take away from this game. And you look at the big picture now. I know there's some fans out there that are like almost rooting for USC to lose because they just don't want this coaching staff around anymore. But I think in the big picture, 2-2, they're kind of in this playoff mode. Every game's a must-win game. And the two teams they lost to on the road are looking pretty good now. I know Texas lost early to Maryland, but they beat TCU this past weekend. They're ranked now. Stanford gets a huge win up at Oregon. So I think this Washington State team is actually pretty good. So we'll see how much they. Clay Helton said in his conference call today that he feels that they're going to be a team that contends for the North. I'm not sure about that, but this is a real offense. And Gardner Minshew, I think he was a stud out there. That intermediate passing game, it was beautiful to watch. I mean, they were just moving the ball really well. But the defense got a couple late stops, couple 3 and outs. I think that was really huge. They the right times they got them. And of course the field goal block, which was an interesting call, even just that Mike Leach would kick the field goal. So I think overall, Keely, I think it was real positive. Everything wasn't perfect. There was a bunch of stuff that you could nitpick and everything, but I thought it was a pretty positive day or night for USC.
Yeah, it was definitely a win that USC needed. Otherwise, this would have been the tone of this show would have been very. It would have been a little different.
Yes.
Shotgun says that he's watching from work to make sure he keeps us in check.
Yeah.
Can't really
give us some of those factoids you got, Shotgun.
Yeah. So we will be getting into that. The question I have for you, Ryan, is it looked like there was more chemistry between JT Daniels and his wide receivers, but it also seemed like this offense is a little bit feast or famine. It seems like they're expecting individual players to make big plays versus the offense as a whole working together to put in aggressive or fluid drives. What did you see? I think at least at Stanford, we didn't see those big plays connecting, and I think that was the difference against Washington State.
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry was much better, and I thought it would be better between Tyler Vaughns and Michael Pittman and JT Daniels. It seemed like come out great with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they've been playing together forever. And I think the only way this offense was going to take it to the next level was to build up that chemistry and have trust in those guys. Tyler Vaughns didn't even get the start in this game, so I don't know if that a bit of a fire under him, but you saw some of those catches. That's what we were seeing in practice, and you saw some of it last year. We just weren't seeing that really in the games. Pittman has that huge 50-yard run where he makes the dude miss or pushes him out of the way or whatever, and goes for a touchdown. That one that looked like a touchdown in the back of the end zone, that was a spectacular catch. And I think you're seeing JT throwing it up to Vaughns, letting him high point it. That's something he does really, really well. You can get that going. That's going to give him a lot more confidence. You would love to have the tight end game be kind of part of that, but it's not. So you got really good wide receivers. So I think Pittman, Vaughns, and St. Brown, seem like the best three right now. So you can throw it them. But we saw some Trayvon Sidney earlier, not as much lately. Velus Jones, a little bit of that. You would love to have the tight ends kind of be a part of that, but as you know. And one other quick thing, Keely.
Yeah.
So I wrote that piece about this could be a historically bad attendance at the Coliseum because of Friday game, 1 and 2 start, and all the construction. It was over 52,000, and I thought that was real. It seemed like even late in the game, I don't know, you were down there, the crowd got into it a lot, so it was more people than I thought. And I think I mentioned the person that there was someone on the peristyle who was landing. He didn't land until 5:55 at LAX, but got an Uber in about 2 minutes and just took an Uber all the way there. And he got there before kickoff, which is pretty amazing.
What time did he get there?
I think he said it was like 7:50. He sent me a PM or something. It was like 7:15 or something. So like amazing, like door to door, just to get out of the airport. He didn't have any luggage, and sometimes you could call an Uber. It could take 30 minutes. So it was pretty cool that he shared that story with me that he ended up getting there. And there was a lot of traffic and stuff around the Coliseum early on before there were any people in there. But like I said, more people came than I thought. It still was the smallest home crowd since 2001, I believe it was. There was a couple games in the 40s that year, Pete Carroll's first year, and then there was like a real bad one in Paul Hackett's last year against Washington State also. So, kind of historically low, I guess you could say, since the first time since 2001, but a little better than I thought.
Yeah, it definitely helped the team at least. I know in the post-game presser, Helton made sure to say that that was important for the team.
Yeah.
Cam Smith seemed very emphatic about that. He nodded, and we heard it from a couple other players too. But I think especially when you have a team that's young like this team and maybe a little less mentally tough as other teams we've seen, having the crowd behind you when the momentum might swing definitely gives them an extra boost and is something that they need. Shotgun said, where did he go? He said, one thing that really helps with those pass connections is getting pass interferences correctly called after getting mugged in the Stanford game, which is true.
There were so many. I got to count them. I think there were like 5 pass interferences and 2 defensive holdings. Like, it was a lot.
I remember Chris Trevino tweeted in the game, it seems like USC's offensive game plan is just to try and get pass interference calls.
Okay.
And it kind of looked like that a little bit.
Yeah. It looks like our Periscope is working now. For some reason, at the beginning, it was not at first, but it wasn't. I don't know. I started it. Sorry, we were hosting the show. We got to control it, so I don't mean to look away, but just trying to get so. Welcome to our Periscope people. If it wasn't working the first time, it looks like it's working now. So you can put questions there. We're both monitoring YouTube, and Keely's monitoring Facebook. Looks like we got a lot of YouTube comments and stuff there. So
yeah, we'll get into those. One last thing, it looked like Washington State was picking on Greg Johnson a little bit, picking on the DBs a little bit. What did you see in that regard?
I think Iman Marshall's playing really, really well. It's almost like they're not going to that side of the field as much, and they rotated in Greg Johnson and Isaiah Langley a little bit. He's not the tallest guy in the world. I think they try to pick him a little bit, but this air raid offense, I mean, someone's going to end up looking bad. You saw them drop a lot of guys back into coverage. I think I thought USC did a really good job on the real short passing game, the stuff that was near the line of scrimmage. I think that's how Washington State came out of the gate trying to do that, and USC stopped it. Once they started doing the intermediate stuff, they found some holes and were able to complete a bunch of passes. But it ended up being a big day for Cameron Smith and John Houston. I think they had 22 combined tackles. Clay Helton talked about that on his conference call. So I think overall, like, I wasn't as down on the defensive effort as some people were, but it was a little bit of I think Greg Johnson, even and Langley too. I think both those guys had some issues, but I like the way Iman Marshall's playing. I think it's helped him a lot that he came back, and we'll see how he goes from there. But the other side, you have to shore it up a little bit.
Yeah. There's another question I was going to ask.
What did you think? What did you think? from down the field? Did it look a little different?
It's hard to see the DBs from my perspective, so I can't really say much until I rewatch the game, which I haven't yet with Shotgun. Shotgun, let me know when you want to do our film study. The other thing I was going to ask you was, and I keep forgetting it, whatever, I'll come back to it.
One of the things that came up in the conference call, and
that's what I was going to ask you. Did anything else come out of the conference call that is worth mentioning? I know USC was relatively healthy coming out of this game.
Yeah, so we had it was Klain on Periscope. Well, we got one that says Fire Helton, but the first comment. But Klain wants to know about the lack of turnover. So USC has generated 2 turnovers so far this year. Clay Helton said the goal is to get 3 a game, and that's something that they work really hard at practice on. They different schemes, they different things that they try to do. And I think Shotgun tweeted out, well, they're minus 10 on where their goal, the goal is to have 3 a game. You want 12, right? At this point, after 4 games, they have 2. So they're 10 behind. And then I think Michael Lev tweeted out too that Arizona's only forced 1 turnover this year. So it was a clean game from Washington State. And Clay Helton said, taking care of the ball was really important. 1 turnover in that game for either side probably cost you the game, right? Just the way as close as it was. So I think it's something he was asked about, and it's an area of concern. One of the bigger things. I don't think there was a lot of super newsy stuff coming out. Velus Jones had an elbow, so he was big on kick returns. So he's day to day, but he left the game.
Okay. Not nothing too noteworthy.
Wasn't super newsy. We could play like the breaking news thing kind of stuff. It's he was most of his opening rant or whatever that he does was sometimes it's like here's the stuff I liked, and then here's the stuff I didn't like. Here's the crappy stuff.
Yeah.
In a positive spin. But there really wasn't a lot of that. I mean, it was more. He said that special teams took a step forward. They said they worked on. I guess the last 2 weeks they really worked on getting a block a lot. So the punt block against Texas, which obviously didn't work, and then the one that did work when Washington State's guard tanked, and then Chitufele came in and blocked it. So that's still. I mean, he said they took a step forward, and that's nice. It was a really nice special teams play, and it was crucial thing to the game. The issue I have is it's like you work hard and you get one of those. It's like a hero play, and there's so many other things that are bad. It's like it's not worth it. You want to just be a lot more even keel. My philosophy is more just be more. You're this talented of a team. Just be more even keel on special teams because they're it's costing you a lot of yardage and stuff. The punting got a little bit better. I think the average ended up being like 38, but it was still it wasn't great.
Yeah.
But it got I think Reed Butteridge handled all of it, and I think he did a much better job. So that's good.
Well, that brings me to a point about this game as a whole. On paper, it's a win. USC wants a win. That's good. But if they don't block that field goal, overtime possibly, we don't know what happens. It's a game of ifs, of course. But this is a game that still had a lot of flaws. There's a lot of penalties in this game. The offense was a little feast or famine.
Yes.
So I feel like USC kind of has this tendency sometimes that if they do a little bit of tweaks and they see a positive result, we're good. That's it. We don't have to keep trying to improve or fix things. And I'm afraid that might happen if you get a win like this at home.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. You got to point out the negative, huh, Keely? Yeah, so
I'm just saying.
No, there obviously there's a lot of flaws there. That game could have easily gone the other way. I mean, the difference between 2-2 and 1-3 is huge. And but I do think this is a pretty good Washington State squad. There's just weird stuff that happens. That first drive of the game, like if you're a running, you're a fan of the run game, that was a thing of beauty. They just ran the ball down Washington State's throat, just chunk. Even got a penalty in there, so it was, I forget what it might have been a 5-yard or something, but it was, first and long, and they picked up the first down right away.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 down the field, and touchdown. You're like, wow. Now, it didn't really look like that for the rest of the game, which maybe, that's one of those things you're like, well, where was that? But they did go to some I formation stuff late in the game. And I know we had a question on the podcast with Harvey Hyde today, how is this stuff just installed? So Clay Helton said they installed that stuff this past week, where more of the power run game, and one of the people that wrote in was like, how could that just be? How can that be? How can you just install it right now? This should be a team that can do that all the time. So fans of the older school look, I formation stuff, they got a little taste of that. I don't know if they're going to do more of it. Like we've said a whole bunch of times, that's not really their philosophy, but maybe that's changing a little bit. Keely's concerned that You can be complacent after win, like, hey, what we're doing is working. But I think you're right, Keely. I think there still needs to be changes implemented going forward. I think there were some positive things, but this is a team that's a work in progress. I'm not sure. I mean, they're capable of beating probably just anybody, but I still think they're capable of losing to just about anybody. And Arizona, they were they weren't playing very well. They're playing much better right now, and they got their left tackle back who was suspended for a couple games. They ran all over Oregon State, 430-something yards on the road. This is a team that didn't look good early. They're looking better. So I'm not saying they're peaking, but they're playing better. So I think this road trip is going to be, maybe a bigger test than I thought it would be. But, I think USC is playing a little bit better than I thought they would be too.
Yeah. Speaking of the I formation, we actually have a question on YouTube. Scott says, what are your thoughts on Clay saying that the I is Trojan football when he rarely utilizes it? It seems odd that he would say that when obviously it is not part of this Trojan team.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting point. I think a lot of fans want to see that more, and it really hasn't been a part of their repertoire. I mean, it's just not really part of the philosophy. And I'm not saying that might be something T. Martin wants to do, but it's not really part of the playbook. I'm not sure. But that's at least a step in the right direction if you like that. I think the problem is when you don't do it often, you got to practice it too. If you're not doing that in practice, then what's the point? Because we saw them go under center twice against Texas and get penalties both. Neither play worked, and they got penalties both times. This was obviously much more successful. It's a different kind of situation where you're trying to run out the clock and things like that. But yeah, that was kind of curious. I think people are like, well, why haven't you been doing this? We'll see. I still think everything's a work in progress. If he starts doing that more, I mean, maybe that'll be a shift in their the offensive philosophy a little bit. I don't see big changes like that coming, but having those packages in there, it's cool. Fans will like it, but you definitely have to make sure that they're practiced. Otherwise, you could have some bad results.
Yeah, exactly. We have a question from Tarek with a K,
hey, Tarek,
who says, if USC has a rematch with Stanford in the Pac-12 title game, do you think they can win it?
I think they can win that game. If they get there. Stanford looks pretty good though right now. Obviously the first game didn't go that well, but the USC defense I think played Stanford pretty well. So you kind of feel good about that. It's really just getting the offense going. I don't think Stanford's got this all-world sort of defense. They'll probably be a little bit better by the end of the season, but it was more about USC just doing poor things to me. So they score a bunch of points. Stanford, they can win. I could see that happening. They're a long way from that USC getting back. So I would. That's not something I'd really be worried about right now. Worry about going to Arizona and getting a win.
Exactly. Dennis says the running game starts like gangbusters, then we stop. Why?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, coaches make adjustments all the time, and I know Shotgun talked about loving what Mike Leach would do, making changes, and you could see it through the game, throughout the game.
Yeah.
He made some interesting changes later that didn't work out that well, but I think they love running a lot of screens and stuff, getting their wide receivers, and USC had them tight at the line of scrimmage, playing coverage there, and that really short game, the behind the line of scrimmage game, wasn't really working for Washington State. So you saw Leach adjust, and the intermediate passing game was, so they kind of make all these kind of changes to what's going on. I don't know why they got away from that. I think you make some adjustments if you're Washington State right away, but it didn't seem like they were trying to do that. It's one of those things like if you ran the ball and you just run down their throat, I would love to see them just do the second drive the exact same way.
Yeah.
And we felt this was going to be a game where they were going to try to get the running game. Once you rush for -5 yards, you have to. Turn that around. But there was a lot throughout the game. There was the 80-yard, drive rush, and then there was all these negative plays and stuff that were happening, and they were below that. I think going into the fourth quarter, and then they started running, a little bit later. But yeah, there was after that opening drive, the running attack was hard to. It was just hard to get things going again.
Yeah, Brandon says, do you think the poor cornerback play is based off of talent or the coaching of Ronnie Bradford?
The poor court. Well, I wouldn't say it's all poor. I don't think Iman Marshall's playing poor. I think that's really hard to say. And in this defense with Clancy Pendergast, you're put in tough spots as a corner. They're asked to do a lot, and even if you're struggling, he's not changing. He's not protecting them back there. He's putting those guys on islands, and you're playing an air raid offense, there's going to be guys all over the place, a lot of people to cover. I mean, I'm not like associating blame. Well, this was a problem. This was a problem. I mean, yeah, you're going to give up some yards when you're playing Mike Leach, and I thought they did pretty good in some spots. Obviously, not so good in others.
And in theory, Jack Jones is supposed to be playing that corner spot opposite of Biggie, and that's more experience than Greg Johnson and Isaiah Langley have. So off-season things influences that. So that's not necessarily a Ronnie Bradford thing per se.
And to be down 3 safeties too. I mean, that's a blow to the secondary. So people keep at there was no Bubba Bolden update from Clayton. No one asked. Like people, there's no point in asking anymore.
Yeah, we'll tell you if something happens. How about that?
Any update on that?
Yeah.
Nope.
Manueli says, "Do you think coaching changes are coming for SC?"
I mean, not during the season. No. There were some rumblings though, like at the 1-2 mark, and it was similar to 2016 1-3. And they turned things around. And I know some threads on the peristyle, people were like, you're like giving us, wishy-washy answers. There's a lot of people that want to change, and they just look at it and they go, you know what, Clayton's a nice guy, but we see these problems and we don't think it's going to be a championship caliber team under his watch. And, I think that's fair. Like, you feel that way. I didn't feel like coaching changes would be happening after the season, almost no matter what before. I don't think that's the case, but I don't think anything's going to happen during the season. If it's if they make a run and they go to the win the South or something, I don't think there's going to be any sort of change. But if it's like a 7-5, which that's certainly capable of happening, then you might see that. I think it's not just it would have to be like a loss to Notre Dame. So at the end of the day, when you're like, oh, we lost Stanford, the fans are saying we lost to Stanford, we lost to Notre Dame, and Texas, and some of the big games. That's the kind of stuff that boosters aren't going to be real happy with. But remember, there's no president at USC right now. So there's probably a lot of board of trustees kind of power being thrown around, and there's some leadership issues at USC in general. So it's not. I don't think anything's going to be all that easy. But I do feel the team struggles the rest of the season. A change is likely going to happen, and if it's decent, then maybe there's some sort of. But it's not fireable for Clay. Maybe there is some pressure from Lynn Swann to come in and make some changes at some of the coordinators, assistant coaching positions, things like that. He was asked about his relationship with Lynn Swann, and they meet every Monday to talk about the game. And he says he bounces ideas off of Lynn Swann. He said he's been very supportive. Their relationship has grown since he's been the athletic director. He loves having a football guy as the athletic director, and he knows a lot about the wide receivers. Like, he'll make some suggestions and things like that. So yeah, I mean, at least from what he's saying, they have a positive relationship. Well, like we said, we don't see him a lot at practice. He's come out a couple of times. I think the more you see him, then maybe that's more. It's like, hey, he's got to do this evaluation and make what's going on. So we'll see. I'm not really sure. It's hard because we don't know a lot about Lynn Swann as an athletic director. So, but I do think he has people in his ear telling him this isn't the direction we want to go. So I think there's some pressure on Clay to, there's a good win Friday night and turn things around and keep getting more wins.
What did you make of, you and I were both on the field after the game. It seemed like the relief was palpable from not only the players but the coaches, that they knew if they had lost against Washington State, it was about to get much, much worse as far as the tension goes. I mean, Clancy Pendergast came up to you. It was such an odd moment. He's like, hey, good job, and like patted you on the shoulder like you were a player or something. Odd moment. I think it was just in the moment. But what did you think of the relief that you could almost feel on the field?
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And that was strange. It wasn't like I just was going to say hello, like, hey, say hello or something. And it's one of those things where he was probably saying nice job to a bunch of players, turns to me and sees me, and like I'm saying hello, and he says nice job, just because it's just whatever. It's not, someone said, oh, was it your tweet game that was not? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think he's reading tweets during the game. But yeah, no, it did feel like there was a sense of relief. And, they were pretty excited to get that win. They needed to get back on the winning ways. And the more, you saw that game, the opening drive looked like, okay, USC's going to handle this. And Washington State adjusted and came back and, obviously put up a bunch of points. So then you knew this is a very losable game. This was, we weren't sure how good Washington State was going to be because of the schedule. But, they looked like a good team should look when you play Wyoming and Eastern Washington and I think it was San Jose State. So they look like, if a good team played those teams, that's what they look like. So you kind of get a feeling, even though I haven't played anybody, this is a pretty good team. So I think you're right. Like, you could feel it. They needed this win.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were bummed. This was like, okay, get off this net. It's like you needed that.
Yeah. And in some ways, maybe the short turnaround was probably good to get that out of their mouths. Matt Brown says, was August Eure demoted? Vi and Stephen Carr look good. Glad to see them get the majority. So I ended up actually talking to August Eure for a little bit. He said his knee acted up a little bit in the first quarter, but he's fine. He didn't really get into whether that played into the game. I kind of asked around to see if what he said after the Texas game might have affected his playing time, and I got no's. So I don't think that has to do with it, but I'm not sure if they would flat out tell me that. But yeah, at least it was good to see USC go with the hot hands with Stephen Carr and Vi, but I don't know what that means for Ced going forward.
Yeah, he was announced as the starter, and then Clay Helton mentioned the knee issue a little bit on the conference call too. So it was he got 1 carry minus 5 yards. He just wasn't in there all that much, but officially it's coming in as there was a bit of an injury, and those two guys, the other two guys looked really good too. I think once he's healthy, he'll be back. You'll probably see a lot more of him against Arizona if he's feeling good this week in practice, because he was limited a little bit last week in practice, right? I think he didn't do as much. So, I believe that, but, maybe what he said did have something. I'm not sure, but we'll see going forward. Yeah, I mean, I like him. I know some people aren't as high on August Eure as I am. I think he's helped this team a lot, and he can do that, as long as he stays healthy. We talked about running backs get banged up all the time. It's going to be hard for any of them to stay healthy throughout the whole season, but it's nice to have 3 that you like, because then all of them can play.
Yeah. Brandon says, I have noticed for as long as I can remember, we aren't physical with opponents' wide receivers off the line. Is that Ronnie Bradford, or is it Clancy's scheme?
I think it's more of a scheme thing. They're not super aggressive. And they did drop a lot of guys back into coverage. I think, 8 or 9 guys, sometimes they would go. It was hard to get pressure, so sometimes they were just dropping more people. And they did a really good job of batting away some of the passes. So I think, some of the strategy stuff worked all right. But yeah, it's not, you see those guys, you're putting them on an island all the time. They're not getting a lot of help. So it's tough to get them really up on the line of scrimmage and be more aggressive, because if you get beat, there's no one really behind you to help. So yeah.
Andrew says, all the Wazoo fans are talking about the no-call targeting hit by Porter. What are your guys' takes?
Yeah, I mean, I look like targeting to me.
The one more so than Texas.
Yeah, the Texas one, it was definitely worse than that. But yeah, there was a lot of, seemed like there was a lot of outrage on Twitter and stuff. And it's hard. I mean, some of the calls, there's just a lot of weird calls. And I don't think it's in one, team's favor or the other. It's just a lot of bad calls, a lot of reversals that you think should be reversed. They're hey, that looked like, was that a catch at the end? The end of the game, or near the end of the game, I forget who the Washington State receiver was. It looked like the ball hit the ground. You could see it moving. I don't think you could see it specifically, but it seemed like it moved the ball from the replay. They didn't overturn it. But I think on that play, too, he was getting interfered with. So it kind of worked out, So probably 2 bad calls on that, just that one play alone. Maybe that evened itself out. I'm not sure.
Offsetting bad calls.
Yeah. And then other people were asking about I don't even know the rule about this, but there was one special teams play where there were personal foul or unsportsmanlike conduct on USC, 2 of them on Washington State in the same play, and they all just canceled out. So I don't know if you could have 5 on one side and 8 on the other, and then it still just cancels. But apparently 2 and 1, people were like, well, why is that? I'm I don't know, some rule or something, but apparently that's the rule. I wouldn't think, I haven't heard anyone say they messed that up. That must, I assume that's the rule.
Yeah, apparently so. Matthew says, how many wins is it realistic for USC to win this year?
I mean, I think realistic. We said 9-3 was about right coming in.
Yeah.
With the 1-2 start, I think that makes it harder, can USC keep the home winning streak going? Was it 19 in a row, I think? It's the longest streak outside of Alabama or something.
Yeah.
You got Notre Dame that'll be at home. You got Colorado. I think they've looked pretty good. Definitely some losable games. I mean, if the team plays well, then even getting to 10 wins, I think is still a possibility. But I think 9 wins. You got to be playing pretty well, though.
Yeah.
but
The line needs to actually block.
yeah, or like 7. If otherwise it could be, you could see 5 losses in there. So there's, or I mean, some people think more. I don't know. It seems 7-5 still seems like, because I don't think the rest of the Pac-12 is all that great. But you might catch Arizona, playing well, or Arizona State. They battled Washington. I think it was an 18-point spread, and it was a pretty close game. So
Yeah.
you don't have Oregon, you don't have Washington, so that's kind of a plus. But Cal has a really good defense. If USC struggles on offense again, that's a defense that can shut you down.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've only seen one really offensive performance from this team so far, so I don't know if we can see if that, we can't say that that's going to be a constant going forward. We can't necessarily tell. But I talked to you about this before the Washington State game. The general consensus from us was it would be 3-2 in September. It could still be 3-2, but does it still feel like what we originally thought it might be?
No, it feels like, the 1-2 I thought was realistic, but it felt 1-2 felt worse than what it, than what I felt that would be, because you only scored 3 points against Stanford, and because you got blown out by Texas and didn't look good at all, and -5 rushing and all that. So it was a worse feel. So even, if USC is able to beat Arizona, I don't know if, beating Washington State and Arizona is going to give you all the feels that you want after, those. It's not going to erase.
Yeah.
It's going to take, because, 2016, it's going to take a lot to erase getting absolutely smashed by Alabama to start the season,
Yeah.
So, but winning 9 in a row and going to the Rose Bowl, like that, I mean, a lot of people felt great after that season. So it would kind of take something like that, I think, to get the bad taste out of their mouth. I don't think, 8-4 with some good, beating UCLA and stuff is going to feel like, oh yeah, we turned it around kind of thing. I don't think people are going to feel like that.
Yeah, it actually popped up in my iPhone memories today. It's 2 years to the day of the Utah loss in 2016 with Sam Darnold. So
I got to book my Utah flight. It's the last Pac-12 stadium I have not been to, so I'm looking forward to
look at you.
doing it. I won't be in Arizona, so Keely and everybody's got that covered. And I just let people know, we're supposed to have, so we knew Shotgun had to work. We were supposed to have Max Brown come in again, but then he had some family thing come up. So we'll get him back. We had a lot of good feedback about him being in there and stuff. So we wanted to have him in talking about the game. It was with him there the first time. It was a lot about himself, and yeah, that's understandable. But I think we'll have him on some other times to have him analyze games.
Yeah. Matthew also has a question. He says, "What does Tim Drevno actually do?" Sass.
He coaches the running backs,
Yeah.
right? I saw it was funny. So Kansas City is just putting up tons of points. If you play fantasy football and you got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, the kid from Texas Tech, they look great. They put up a lot of points, and that's where D'Lo McCullough is now the running backs coach. So I got to see, I was watching it a little bit today. I'm like, oh, there's D'Lo McCullough. He had that cool story that came out recently. But yeah, no, Tim's a running back coach and the running game coordinator. So he must have been tickled pink to see what USC did in that opening drive. And I don't know, maybe they put him in a closet or something afterwards and didn't let him do that anymore. So,
do you have any Periscope questions? That
let me look. Sorry. People think so. This is from USC. USC Go. People think it's a play calling issue. It's not. It's a lack of offensive line coaching. He said the offensive line play is horrendous. Clay has to put the team first, not his relationship with Neil Callaway, or he'll be gone eventually. So he's some critical thinking about the offensive line. They do have to play better. I mean, there's no excuse for the offensive line playing poorly when you have, we said it a zillion times, you have all these veterans, 15 scholarship offensive linemen, and you saw the JC transfer get in there. He was doing like special teams work, I think, right, Keely? What was it? What's his name?
What? Sorry, I was reading questions.
No, I'm sorry. The JC offensive lineman. Is it Bradley?
Oh, Shermer.
Yeah, Shermer. Okay, I'm Clayton Bradley, not Clayton Bradley. He changed his name. Yeah,
Clayton Bradley was at the Beyonce concert, by the way.
He was. Oh,
I know.
nice.
I was like, am I imagining things? Like, I'm around the USC football team too much, but they were there.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, there's really no excuse for this line to not play better. I agree with you. I mean, they have everything in place, and I think there will be pressure to make a change because Neil Callaway, coached with his dad for years. It's basically like his uncle. It's like a family member. And it was hard, like for Lane Kiffin to get rid of Monty Kiffin in the end. not saying that's what you should be doing, but that's something you need to look at. And if you're not going to because of that relationship, if the line keeps underperforming, I think you don't have a choice but to make a change. And I don't know what Clay Helton would do.
Yeah. Brandon in that same line says, what was with Toa? We did see a lot of poor snaps from Toa Lobendon. That's what we saw at the beginning of fall camp.
Yeah.
Credit to JT Daniels. He was kind of playing acrobat and just catching some crazy balls. But that was it was a tough night for Toa Lobendon.
It was. And if you go back and look at I think it was the UNLV game and watch him, and there was concerns there with what he was doing. JT Daniels, for his first game, you needed to give him something. That's the first time you touch the ball. That's how the play starts. Him getting a snap from, the shotgun or pistol or whatever. And watch that game. The snaps were great. Like, I think he didn't have to, he could catch it and just get to his progressions, get to what he needs to do. So for his very first college game, that was awesome. Now, this was more of I think he was like, he was ready. Like, okay, where's this one coming now? Because I don't know how many bad snaps there were. There were a bunch. But he made some really good plays out of a couple of them, too. So I don't know. We saw him kind of warming up during a timeout to 11, doing more snaps. But you figured that was fixed, that he hadn't played center for a while. Once he got it going again, you don't really expect it to kind of go poorly after that. But it wasn't good. I don't think they were close to like replacing him. We'll see if they work some of the guys more in practice this week. But what do you think? It was a concern to me.
Yeah, it was definitely concerning, especially if you're going to expect that game from Toa, maybe against Texas when it's a little bit more hostile. He had to cover his ear to hear in Texas, so maybe that's when. So it was just a little odd that would happen for this game.
Yeah.
I know USC wouldn't do this, but what do you think about maybe moving Toa to a guard position and then maybe putting Brett Nealon in at center?
Yeah, he came in and got to play some fullback, so he was wearing number 99, and that seemed to work pretty well. My guess is they're not going to do that, Keely. Like, that's, it's a senior, loyalty, all that. I just don't feel it would have to get pretty bad. They didn't turn the ball over, but if one of those bad snaps became a turnover, USC could lose the game, right? So
you essentially, when you have a 2nd and 33, I think that's essentially
kind of a turnover.
Turnover.
2nd and 30.
Yeah, it was.
It's like, what?
Yeah. Jason says, did y'all ever get to follow up with Chip Brown on his comment that there is friction between Swan and Helton?
Ah, crap. No, I never did.
Yeah, he dropped that on the podcast, and then.
Yeah. No, if I remember, I'll try to text him and stuff. I could text him now, but I don't want to do it during the show.
Good old Chip. Let's see.
Or
what
call
else?
him. Like, hey, what's...
Guest call on the show. Any other Periscope questions while I'm trying to find
Sure.
them?
Well,
y'all keep putting a lot of statements, but no questions.
Yeah.
Or questions that aren't productive.
Fono or something. There's a lot of weird names on Periscope. This team feels like a great coach away. Yeah, I mean, that's a comment, but I think the talent is there. There's so many advantages to being USC in Los Angeles, and having JT Daniels and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They could Uber from their high school to USC. 5-star guys just in your backyard. I was watching one of the games, like Paul Richardson caught a touchdown. It's like, that was at Sarah High School. Now, he ended up going to Colorado, but just little Sarah High School in Southern California had on one team him at wide receiver in the NFL. Marquise Lee, wide receiver in the NFL. We went to USC, obviously. Robert Woods, wide receiver in the NFL. Huge game today. And George Farmer, who was a 5-star, didn't end up panning out. But those all came from Little Sarah High School. Like, I mean, if you're in the South, a lot of times you're driving hundreds of miles to find a 5-star, and they're right in your backyard. There's so many advantages to being USC. So you're right. If Clay Helton can turn things around and, improvements on the staff and become, this is full year of being head coach, become a great head coach, this team could be, there's no reason that this team can't be great. They're there. I mean, the sanctions are over. All that stuff is available. And I think that's what frustrates a lot of fans are, if you had, A+ coaching, this team could do a lot of great things. I don't think we've seen A+ coaching this year. I think they got a little bit better this last game, but they're going to have to get, I think, a lot better. But you're right. I mean, that's why people felt like, oh, you hire this amazing coach and you can do things. USC doesn't have a history of hiring amazing coaches. They don't go out, like UCLA doesn't really either, but they did this last one going to get, Chip Kelly, at least the coach that everybody wanted. I think, if you read Dan Weber's new book about the history of USC football, you can check it out on Amazon. Yeah, I mean, like Howard Jones, when they hired him in the 30s or whatever it was, he was like a national championship winning head coach that they got. They wanted to get Newt Rockne. He wasn't going to leave South Bend. And so they get Howard Jones, who was winning at like Yale and stuff. Had won multiple national championships before he got to USC and then made a run. But everyone since then, it hasn't really been like this super established coach. So I think that's what people kind of wanted to see. Obviously, they didn't do that with Clay Helton, but if he can, upgrade the staff and get better, yeah, I mean, I think they have a lot of potential.
I gotta give some YouTube some love. They had some good questions.
Okay.
They were clamoring for some love. Daryl says, "Do we have any good blocking tight ends?"
Kromenhoek is probably the best one, but he's he looks like a pass catcher more than. Yeah, they don't really like.
It makes you wonder what this team could be with Daniel Montebabe and maybe a Kerry Angeline if that didn't go south.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just like at this point, like is Daniel Montebabe ever going to play again? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, that's a spot where you have an assistant coach for the tight ends now, and Kiri Colbert. I mean, he was obviously a wide receiver, but they're not. If you grade everything out, and we do all like the Pro Football Focus grades, I don't think the tight end spot is very good. I know the special teams were ranked last in the nation last week. We'll see where they are this week, but I would think the tight end spot's not going to be ranked very high either. So they need some production out of that, or just don't use it. Just do 4 wide receivers or.
Is it whatever. At that point where you go 4 wide?
I kind of think so. Like they're not. I mean, what do they do? I know it has to be. They like it being a part of the offense, but it's not. I mean, it's not working. Yeah. It's not. You feel that JT Daniels has chemistry with the wide receivers now. I mean, there's nothing going with the tight end. So after 4 games and it's not working, you're a young quarterback. I don't think you're like trying to make it work. You're like, I'm going to go with what works.
Yeah.
And it's not the tight ends right now.
Yeah. Robert says, would you have preferred Coach O over Clay?
Well, not so when the time Clay was hired, no. But like when the time Steve Sarkisian was hired, yes. Like I will say to this day, there is no way USC would have been worse off if they would have kept Coach Ed Orgeron as opposed to going out and getting Steve Sarkisian. And getting Steve Sarkisian also allowed Chris Peterson to go to Washington. So that like double screwed you. You had a coach that ended up lasting 15 games or whatever Sark did, 16 games. And you sent, one of the best coaches in the country to a rival in Washington. So yeah, I think what you look at what Clay Helton has done, they kind of needed some stability for sure when he was hired. And I think you look at what he did, overachieving really those first 2 years, going to the Rose Bowl, winning the Rose Bowl, and winning the Pac-12. I think that was great, and I think you needed stability. I think you could have got the similar kind of stuff from an Ed Orgeron, that even if it was only for a couple, 2-3 years or something, he would have brought, kept it stable. He was going on a nice run, and I think it would have been none of the crazy stuff that happened with Steve Sarkisian. Now, maybe he's not the long-term guy, but I think that would have been better at the time. And even if let's say the season goes south and they fire Clay Helton at the end of the day, at the end of the year. I think you needed that kind of, you end up picking him, you needed that kind of stability, but he brought you some pretty good success in those first 2 years. And if you get, you part ways after 3 years, I don't think he would be all that upset about it. He had a nice run. It should get him a good job someplace else. And then, USC would have the opportunity to bring in a big name coach that maybe, like, the other question said, could take this team to different levels, which, that's the sense is people don't feel like this team can get to that level. They talk about championships, they talk about the playoff. It just seems like they're far away. So, if something happens and it's a struggle, that's probably why. But I don't think it will be terrible for everyone involved. Clay did some really good things at USC. You don't want people to forget that.
Yeah. Jordan Simi says, why don't we have the kind of financial support for coaching resources that places like Alabama and Ohio State have?
Well, I mean, it's everything and all things at those programs. It's not that at USC. I mean, there's, like we said, the lack of leadership stuff. I mean, it's important to the fans, and I think a lot of fans and boosters and alumni feel like it should be that important to the administration. We haven't always seen that. It's just they handle things a little bit differently. I think previous president Max Nikias was supportive of football, but there were obviously there's other things that you're trying to do, building more buildings and raising money and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily anything except the leadership. It's not the end all be all at USC like it is at some of those other programs. It's huge, it's big, it's important, but it's not it's not put everything into it because that's what you want to do. I mean, you're going to need different leadership for that. That's not from the leadership we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. Peps says, is USC recruiting the wrong type of D lineman? We also got a couple questions about how come the defensive line isn't producing enough pressure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the defensive linemen. We're not seeing as much. I mean, we'll have to check shotgun stuff. We're not seeing as much of a rotation there. Getting pressure on a Washington State quarterback, Gardner Minshew, I think that was going to be tough to begin with. But I think they've done some good things. I don't think they're playing at the level that some of us expected, but I think they're doing all right. I'd like to see some of the Pro Football Focus grades and see how they're doing. But I don't know. What do you think about defensive lineman Keely?
I think it's hard to get in rhythm when you don't have Portegus in the first half, and they do have Portegus in the first half. I believe they went 3 down linemen, and then they went 4, or they had 4 on the front, and then 3. I don't know. I gotta.
Yeah, Rector was in there, and then they started Palier Naoteote too. So,
yeah. So I have to look at it again, but I think Porter said he was feeling a little rusty. It's hard. I mean, and halftime is only 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
So USC didn't even stretch when they came out. They literally came out of the tunnel, ran to the sideline, and so Porter was trying to get warm, but you put Porter there in the second play, he gets a offsides penalty. So it's just like
they got a sack, right?
I think it's hard.
He got it was tackle for a left sack. I forget what it was.
Other people were in there too. But I talked to Kenichi Udezi this week in practice, and he said, I'm not going to say that we've done great producing pressure on the quarterback, but he said, I am dealing with younger guys. And he didn't say it as an excuse, but he said they are younger guys, and they're going to progress over the season, but you have to get into a rhythm, and these guys are still getting into a rhythm. So what you want to take that as, I don't know. I mean, there is something to say for that these guys are young. I don't think, Brandon Peely didn't play a full season last year. Martin Tuipulotu didn't play a full season last year, and Jay Tufele redshirted. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I still think they're inexperienced.
I like the group.
I like the group.
I think you're going to get some production out of it, more production.
Yeah. I think there's an expectation, even on offense, too, that you hope that all these guys that are replacements for guys, you don't see a drop-off in level of production, and I think you're going to see that, especially when you lose a guy like Uchenna Nwosu or something like that.
Yeah. They got a little Uchenna going that last year. They got
EVUs.
some batting some passes down at the line of scrimmage. So.
It's hard with that shotgun. You have to
sorry. Yeah.
No. It's okay.
We need you, shotgun.
I know. We need you to buy some time so I can find questions to ask Ryan.
I can look on the Periscope thing too,
but. John says, Ryan, does USC have a fullback? And if it doesn't, why not? And what about a tight end that can block and catch? If not, why not?
No fullback, because it's not part of the offense. You saw Brett Nealon come out there, or Nealon, wear 99 and do that. And they had Vavai Malapai do it the last game against Texas, and that didn't work. He got a clipping or whatever, a chop block. So I like putting in offensive lineman there to block as opposed to a running back who's not really practicing that or doing that. He's not blocking as much. But no, that's not part of their philosophy. As far as the tight ends go, there have been, they've had injury problems. They've had people transfer out. There's been a lot of issues there. They're usually recruiting the catching tight ends. It's not really, the big blocking kind of guys. They don't really have anyone like that on the roster. They want to get guys that can catch, that can also can block. It's not really been working out. We're not seeing them catch, and we're not seeing them block. So I don't know. It's probably they don't have a lot of bodies there right now too. So they've been hit with that, like people trying from Bryce Young. Is that the right guy?
What, Bryce Young? Monday?
No, not Bryce Young. Who was like the tight end that ended up getting legal trouble?
Bryce Dixon.
So yeah, Bryce Young. Screwing it up with a Kurt recruit, and Kerry Angeline with their communication problems, he ends up transferring out, all that kind of stuff. So, there's been some issues there, and we'll see. Maybe they can shore it up, a year or two with a permanent tight ends coach, because last year it was John Baxter doing both duties, but it's not really been producing anything this year.
Shotgun reminded me, it was a 3-3-5 defense in the first half, and then they switched with Porter coming back in. So,
okay, yeah. So they had, on the outside, they had Christian, I think, Rector, on one side, and then Pallier, Nalotiote coming on the other. So they were the kind of outside guys with the 3 down linemen, I believe.
Giovanni, who got my attention by saying Keely, he says, is it just me, or does this team seem to get more and more undisciplined each week?
There was a bunch of emails about that too, about discipline. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the discipline thing? But there's people that are not happy.
It was a sloppy game.
Yeah.
I think this could have been a much tighter game. I mean, a lot of offside penalties from the defense, giving up huge yardage, and then you had Shotgun tweeted this during the game. There's been a special teams penalty in every single game.
Yes.
And so things like that really add up. And when you don't have a lot of confidence in your offense, those penalties really kill you in your defense, So I just think it needs to get cleaned up. Like we said earlier, they had over 99 yards of penalties against Texas. I don't know the whole total for this Friday's game, but it does seem a little sloppy. It felt sloppy in Texas. It felt sloppier in Washington State. But what's the cause of that? Practice?
Yeah. And then, tackling was a bit of an issue, so I don't know if
that's something that I'm seeing from the field. Each game, at least defensively, tackling is just getting worse.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of arm tackles, and when you don't go in full pads, I don't know how you can really simulate tackling.
When's the last time we saw live tackling at practice? Was it during camp? Because I don't think it's been...
Mock game week was okay.
Yeah.
This coaching staff got it. They got the memo. This is competitive and physical, and I mean, we're not saying let's go smash some helmets together. Just some competitiveness.
Yeah.
I mean, Max Brown, when he was on the show, he said that it makes a difference when you have full pads. And you did your whole expose last season, Ryan. But when you have full pads, it's a different mindset. It's a different experience. And I think we're starting to slowly see some tackling fundamentals break down on defense.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a discipline issue. I agree with you, Keely. I think it's more of they're not doing it in practice, and the further away you're getting from camp where they actually are doing it. I mean, the only time they put on pads in the last 2 weeks full pads were the last 2 games, right? So
yeah,
I mean, you can't just do games. I get at the end of the season, I'm not saying I agree with it, but some teams taper down, and they don't go in full pads at all. The last, the no pads November thing. But to do it, I know it was a short week, but that's probably one of the reasons. Short week, and you didn't practice in full pads at all, and you didn't tackle well. There's a reason for that. For the discipline stuff, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're seeing the penalties. Washington State had a crap load of penalties, so they didn't look all that disciplined either. I think the Pac-12, if you're only looking at that, I mean, they can throw flags. They didn't throw those pass interference flags against Stanford. They did, against Washington State, and you saw a lot more of them. It's certainly something they got to work on. But yeah, a lot of people were talking about the discipline factor.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of questions about who would become the next head coach if Clay Helton was fired. A lot of people on the comments seem like they just want almost to tank in a way just to get a new head coach.
I guess someone posted this on the Peristyle too, former USC punter Tom Malone, who grew up in Washington and a big Husky fan, didn't like USC at all. But obviously he came during the Pete Carroll years, and he didn't have to punt a lot. He was really good, but he didn't have to punt a lot because they didn't have to. He came out and, doesn't like the coaching staff, and he said he was going to root for them to lose. We saw some people on the Peristyle, they just want this team to lose so there'll be a coaching change. We're not going to speculate on head coaches and stuff at this point. I don't think, it's going to have to be a pretty bad year for Clay Helton to be fired, which I did, like we said before, I didn't think it was going to happen. But the way they played at times, it could be that bad year, Do they turn it around? And they don't, if they turn it around, it's fine. But the problem is people are still going to be like, I don't care, they did this, but I still want the coach gone. It'd have to be some kind of epic run again, like 2016, to be able to do that. And I don't see that happening, but who knows?
This doesn't feel like the same team that went on the 2016 run.
No. And there's some harder games too this time through. I think Notre Dame was down that year. I'm not saying Notre Dame's amazing, but that's still going to be a really good team that you're going to have to play at home. So, but USC's been really good at home.
Yep. Peps wants to know why. He really wants to know why USC isn't going full pads. You kind of touched on it, but there's no really reason. It's just a Clay Helton thing.
Yeah. There seems to be a hangover from the sanction years, and Clay Helton, was a part of that. So the mentality was more about trying to stay healthy and save bodies and stuff. It wasn't about, hey, just work super hard in practice and make the games easy. I think you can say that, but you're not seeing that. You're not doing that. And you hired someone from that was working under Lane and working under Sark, and that's the kind of stuff you saw then, and you're seeing it now. If you had, I know Ohio State 2 or 3 days a week in full pads. Georgia, same sort of thing. Clemson, it's similar to what Clay Helton does. So I think there's all kinds of different. In Alabama, I think it's like 3 days a week or something. That's it's his philosophy. It's more of, it's not like, we got to make it. You got to work our butts off in practice today, and we're going to do full pads extra and stuff. That's just not part of his philosophy, not part of his mentality. And I think it would do wonders to just do an extra day every once in a while to get everyone's attention. We talked with Max Brown about that in the last show, but that's really not what he does.
Yeah. We got to get this question in from Jason. He asked for the pod. He asked me earlier. Now he's asking me again. He said, what about Austin Appleby at tight end? Can he block? I remember he had some downfield plays during PRPs. Austin had mono for a good chunk of time. And I don't think USC is the type to just throw in a walk-on if they've been out for a while.
Yeah.
I think they're really just honing in on Petit and Cromanhook.
And Follow got some action.
Yeah,
right?
and Follow too, yeah. So, I don't know. But is it at the point where you just try?
I mean, maybe.
But does he know the playbook? Are you comfortable with what he can do? There's other things that we don't necessarily know that might go into that decision, but...
There's something's not quite right. I like Josh Follow a lot. They had some drops and stuff before, but he's a big athletic dude. I think as far as like future NFL tight end kind of guys, like he's probably got the most potential. I mean, maybe a Daniel Hunter baby if he would ever be healthy, but I think Follow's got that kind of potential. I'm no expert on how good of a blocker he is. It seemed to be like okay, but they got to get something going there, and maybe it's Austin Appleby, but like Keely said, you're sick, you're out for a while. It's not like they're going to roll him out there. I mean, that could send a statement too. It's like, hey, you guys aren't playing well. We're going to start a walk-on for a little bit just to see what goes on
there. We did see Cromanhook. He actually started the drive. He came in later as an H-back, but maybe sending Petit a signal a little bit there. Not sure. Scott says, what was your thought on the Michael Pittman play right before halftime? Thought it was a touchdown.
Yeah, I get that once it was called, incomplete, could you see that his foot was in? It looked like, I think if it was called a touchdown, they wouldn't have overturned it. If it was called incomplete, they weren't going to overturn it. But
that's a hard call to make live. It's a bang bang play.
And that looked really good. How close were you to that one?
I was on the opposite side, so I didn't see it at all.
Okay, yeah.
But there was a picture floating around from Trojan Fever, I believe, and his foot is definitely before the white. So,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it looked like it. I know Helton was very animated on the sideline about it.
Yeah.
A lot of F words were dropped. And people in my mentions, I tweeted about it, were surprised that Clay Helton is a little feisty on the sidelines. He's been very feisty lately.
I think that shows you how important this game was to
yes.
him. Like this is, that's not really him,
Yeah.
But, that coaches can press a little bit when there's more pressure on you. And I think there was a lot of, and there will continue to be all season, How do they respond to that? How, you can't have, I don't think they're going to be capable of having a stinker game, because they'll lose. And then it's just going to wipe out anything good you did. So it's sort of, I think Dan talked about sort of being like a playoff thing, right, during your instant analysis where you have to.
Yeah, but doesn't this seem like a Helton pattern almost? You have a sluggish start and then suddenly you're in a win or die type of situation for the rest of the season? Because it feels like every time it's like, okay, well, they have to get this game. They have to get this game. Each game, it's playoff. And I just, wouldn't you like to see a Clay Helton team start off where it's not do or die by before the mid-season mark?
You would think, and then just like changes you could have made going into, the start where like you have to lose to like do things a little bit differently. It seems like that's what's happening.
Well, yeah, I think it would be nice to see maybe last season you don't start Jalen Green, you started Tyler Rollins instead, or those changes that okay, this isn't working. Now it confirms that we should go with the more talented or younger guy. Why not just start from the beginning?
Yeah,
I don't know.
If you started, like people say, you start Sam Darnold from the beginning, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, I don't think there's really like major changes going on now, but got to fix offense.
St. Brown, but
yeah, like he started, right? He started that game. But man, they benched my boy Tyler Rollins. You can't do that. But then he came back and he played well.
It's all good. Phil said, "Are you guys going to do another meetup like you did in Texas? I got there after it was over on Friday, and I think that kind of thing would be cool, even in LA." Sorry, we missed you, Phil.
Oh yeah, we went longer. I think we said 3:30 to 6.
I left at like 7.
Yeah, I think I was there till 8 or something.
Yeah.
So we were there quite a while, and it was huge. Like we had. There had at least 250 people came out because the bar was full at 180 and there was a line and people would come in and go. And so, yeah, it was great. Well, we could try doing. We did one at the before the UNLV game, a Friday night. We did meet up there with Trader Joe's at the Jock Rally. Maybe some sort of watch party somewhere or something. We could do something like that. For an away game. But most of us were usually traveling, so it's hard. Game stuff is hard because we're working and everything.
Yeah.
But we could try to do something.
Yeah, maybe. Quentin says, okay, how many 9 or 10 win seasons will Helton be allowed until they Mark Richt him?
Oh, okay. So you're talking about something different. Like if I don't, 9 or 10 wins, obviously you're not doing anything with them. But it's like how if you're looking at this team and they're winning the South and but just not making it to the playoff. I don't know. That's hard to say. I think, you get the Rose Bowl win, that means something. If you get the Pac-12 title, that means something. But if you're doing that and not making the playoffs, he's done that, twice. A couple more, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. But, Mark Richt was there for quite a while.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be as long for a Clay Helton. I think, there would be pressure to get someone in that can go to the playoffs, but then you're going to get criticized for, say he wins 9 or 10 games every year, the next 2-3 years, and they fire him. Unless one fires him, you're going to get criticism for that too. It's like the guys win 9 or 10 games every year, but obviously you want to be able to get to, you want to get to the playoff, and you want to try to win playoff games and win a championship. And if you're not really getting close to that, then I could see them doing a change. But it would probably be, another 2 or 3 years at the earliest that they would do that if you're winning like 9 or 10 games.
Do you think Helton is the guy to take USC further than 9 or 10 wins?
You want him to be like he's like one of the nicest dudes you could ask for as a coach. You want you have kids, you want them to play for a guy like him. But I'm not seeing the kind of it seems too safe. There seems like he's a guy that's happy to be there because he was promoted and given this amazing opportunity that someone with his resume normally would not have. So I'd like to see him go out and do some, crazier things. And, if he changes, I think he can get there. I'm not seeing it right now, but it would be some, major upgrades to the staff going out and getting guys like we talk about, with Cal, when Justin Wilcox comes in and you get both of his coordinators are head coaches, so that's a big deal, and you're not seeing that. Or who's a head coach on Clay Helton's staff? So I think as a head coach, he has that capability, but he's going to have to do some things differently, and that's going to include bringing in, better assistant coaches like all over the place. So it's not going to replace everybody, but there's some replacements that would need to be made, and I think if he does that, he could get there. I'm not sure if he's going to have time to, or if he's going to be. Or really want to. It's going to be like I'm going to roll with my guys, and if I make it, it's good. If not, then I don't think he's going to get another chance.
Yeah, and obviously these are the issues that come when you hire a first-time head coach
Yeah.
to a program like USC. some things just don't match up well with that situation. In the same vein, Jaime says, Ryan, who do you think is a good coach out there that would take the job and turn this place around? Because I can't think of anyone that would come in and make this program what the fans are wanting it to be at the moment.
Yeah, so I think a couple aspects of that. I think when USC hired Clay Helton, and some people are like, well, who could USC even get? They would fire this guy midseason. They fired. No one's going to want to take the job. Like, that is utter bull crap. Like, it is a top 5 program of all time. We talked about all the advantages. If you go to Alabama, you got to fight tooth and nail to get every 5-star guy you're getting. Now, they do an amazing job of it, but it's really hard. It's not that hard at USC. You look at all the 5-stars that go to the Pac-12, the majority of them, like 95% of them, are at USC. Like, UCLA can get a couple. You'll see one every once in a while go somewhere else, like Stanford will get one or something. But USC gets those guys. Like, you can recruit who you want. It's not you're not in it's the end of the world. Like, if you're in Alabama or Georgia or something, like, that's everything. Like, the people's lives are wrapped up in your team, and that's all they care about. It's California. Like, there's so many other things to do. It's a very different ballgame. It's a coveted job, and for people to say, oh, no one they would want it. You just have to go out and try to get that person that would want it.
The big key.
Yeah, like Chris Peterson, they wanted to, that interview didn't go well. There's a lot of different reporters that were talked about this, but if USC would have just said, here, Chris Peterson, take over the program, I think that would have worked out. He would have taken the job. From the people that I was talking to, I know Washington people were like, no, he never wanted to go to LA. They certainly talked, but that would be USC having to do it someone else's way, and they want to do it their way. So you have to let alpha coaches coach, and so you have to go after them, and then you have to let them do their thing. We're seeing that happen at UCLA. They're letting Chip Kelly do his thing. Now they're losing, but I think they'll turn that around. He doesn't like to do booster stuff. So if you get a Chip Kelly, and booster stuff is super, super important to USC, you'd have to say, sorry, we're not having him do booster stuff. That's what he doesn't want to do that. Chris Peterson would do a lot less of that. He wouldn't do a lot of the interviews and stuff. And, yes, LA is a more open market and more all that kind of stuff. And maybe some of the cultures would clash with Chris Peterson. But if at the end of the day you want to win football games, he's the guy that would win a lot of football games. So I think it's more on the USC administration and some of that, questionable leadership stuff we talked about, going after someone, getting a big name. I mean, you could get a Bob Stoops or something, who's won championships before. You could do that, but USC would have to change the way they think about acquiring a coach. I mean, you saw, what they've been doing. They, try to replace, get Pete Carroll assistants. And everyone it's like part of this little family. And I think they'd have to break away from that to make a big hire. So if something like it happens and they get rid of Clay Helton, obviously you're going to see, hey, what are they going to do? You bring in someone like Jack Del Rio because he's an NFL guy that, I don't think that stuff's going to work out either. It's like, go outside the family, just get someone that's a really, really good coach that, and bring them in and let them do their thing.
So it sounds like it's maybe more of a Heritage Hall problem in that sense than anything else.
I feel that way. I mean, they haven't gone out and tried to get, the best hire was Pete Carroll, and he was like the 4th choice. But he wasn't, this established coach. He was at least an NFL head coach for a few years. But, to hire a guy that's never been a head coach before, just because he's been around in your program for a while, that's not the mentality I want to see from the administration. I don't think Pat Hayden did a very good job at all. And then you hire an inexperienced athletic director next, and you don't know what he's going to do either. So I think all the people that are wanting Clay Helton to be fired, you don't know what you're going to get. It's no guarantee that you're going to go out and get someone that's really good. So you might want to be careful what you wish for. Yeah. But Clay's the head coach. Like, he's not. That's not changing this year. You got to see how the season goes. If it's poor, then I think something could happen. If not, he's going to be around there. But that's my thoughts at least.
Yeah. Jim on YouTube says, do you think Marquise Stepp will ever see playing time this season?
I don't know about this season. What's his health now, Keely? He was out.
Marquise Stepp. He went through concussion protocol. Yeah. But he's back now.
So
because he was warming up at Stanford. But yeah, he's warmed up with the team. He's still getting reps in practice, but I think they like their three-headed monster as
They
of
do.
right now.
But I think, if Ware ends up being out a little bit for the knee, if you get down and then someone gets banged up, he's going to have to come into the game. You're not going to go with one guy. So I think it easily could get in the game, but it's probably going to be more of an injury thing. Unless it's a necessity, I don't think they're going to use him much this year. I mean, use him really this year.
I'm just trying to give the YouTube feed some more love. I know people are a little cranky at me because I'm doing 3 things at once, guys. Shotgun's not here. People are asking about Shotgun. Shotgun is working right now. He usually monitors the YouTube stream. So give me a little.
Angel says Bob would never come to SC. I know that for a fact. You're talking out of your butt. No, I'm saying those are the kind. I'm not saying he would. I'm saying those are the kind of coaches you want to go after. Like you get something like that. So yeah, like those are the kind of things you want to shoot for. And if they say no, they say no. But try. Like they didn't try to go out and get anyone that was a big name. Bruce Feldman asked them specifically if they had talked to Chip Kelly, and they said no. I mean, that's the hottest coaching name that was out there, and USC didn't talk to him. So you give Bob Stoops a call. I'm not saying he's going to come or whatever, but that's who you try to go after, someone that's established, that's done this before and won a championship.
Let's see.
But I could be talking about my butt too,
Maybe a little bit of both. Brody Boy wants to know, can Brett Nealon or Dedich catch the ball? If they're going to be in an H-back, fullback type of situation, why not try and see if they can catch it?
Yeah. I haven't seen them catch the ball. So I don't know. I don't think you're going to use it. I mean, that would be like a trick play sort of thing more than anything. I don't think that's like a solution to the problem at this point. But I like getting that extra block. At least they can block. We've seen just so many missed blocks and breakdowns with that offensive front. Getting someone extra guy in there to block, I think doesn't hurt. But I wouldn't expect them to go out and catch the ball and stuff. I'll look on Periscope real quick.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay. I'm looking. Let's see. A lot of YouTube is a lot of questions that we've already answered or just statements. But I'm looking for you guys. It's not like I'm not looking. I'm trying here. Also, we are over an hour mark, so we probably should get some rapid fire questions in.
Yeah.
It's 8:12 right now.
Oh crap! We went.
Yeah, we went pretty long right now.
Okay.
So if you want to get some rapid fire questions in, we will answer them. YouTube, if you want to get your questions in, I will be specifically looking for you guys. So get some questions in. It's a lot going too.
It is, but it went by fast.
It really did. Yeah, I looked down and I was like, oh, it's late. Yeah. Let's see.
I'm tired. I played golf and a little bit of drinking yesterday. So
a little hungover still.
Watched some football and Keely was out late with the Beyonce thing.
I was.
But we were I had to be at the for the breakfast for the golf tournament at 7:30 in the morning, and I didn't get to bed till about 3:30 that night. So it was a pretty quick turnaround yesterday.
Do you think Bob Stoops could ever come to USC? I know Dan has been talking about it a lot.
Yeah, I think was what Angel was saying.
Did you say?
It was you're talking out of your butt. I don't know much about the Stoops situation. I mean, I'm not looking at potential coaching candidates. It's just a name that comes up sometimes because, he retired. He's still fairly young. And I think Dan was under the impression that, he had heard things that, he would like to come to a place like he was, what's the team that beat his butt the worst? It was USC. If he gets a chance to come there and try to bring them a playoff, I mean, so on the surface, that stuff seems reasonable to me, but I haven't talked to any sources or anything about if that would be a possibility. Angel, I think it was saying, you're talking out your butt, you don't know, but that's the kind of name that, I think you would want to look at. There could be all kinds of reasons why it wouldn't work, but, he's someone that's available and, someone that USC, I think, should consider if the need came to be. Like I said, not saying it would definitely work out or whatever, but.
Yeah, Dan has been saying that he's hearing rumblings about him, that he's coming back to coaching, apparently.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
A lot of it's timing and stuff, too. And I hate talking about this, but
we're going into game 5.
Yeah.
It's not.
But that's what's on a lot of your mind. So, it's like we can't avoid it. I'm not going to not talk about it, but I'd rather focus more on the team and stuff if we could. But I know, this happened in 2016, too, and then it started to go away as the games, were winning and winning. So he wins a few more games. I think people will stop talking about it. But
Jasper Smith says, do you think USC will beat Notre Dame and UCLA?
Right now, no. But, it's a possibility. I think UCLA is bad. They'll probably be better by the end. Devin Monster, their quarterback's going to transfer out. Their other, he's a guy that did pretty well last year, and Chip never gave him any playing time, so he's leaving. I think Chip is changing the culture, significantly, and it's going to be a little bit of a rough patch. So I don't think beating UCLA should be that big of an issue. I think it's going to be tough to beat Notre Dame if they did. That's a good chance to lose the home winning streak would be that Notre Dame game. So if they start playing better, yeah, I'm going to give them a better shot. But right now, I don't think they would be favored in that game. To be sure.
T-Muse the Great says, do you think Vavai could play fullback? He did play fullback on the 4th and 1 at Texas.
Yeah, that didn't go very well. They don't need a fullback. They don't use a fullback, so no. And no, he's a running back. I would just rather see that. They don't have that in their offense. No.
Kevin says, was there any difference in sideline morale versus the Texas and Stanford games? I definitely think they're much more into it at home. I think the crowd really makes a difference. Like I said earlier, especially when you have such a young team, I think they're easily motivated by a crowd being behind them. I think it's easier to be a little bit more into it when you have a full team on the sideline. I know guys were standing on the benches and kind of jumping up and down, and guys were more into it. I just think being in the Coliseum, being at home with your own fans gives you a little bit more interest, or at least a little bit more vibes on the sideline where you're more interested. So, yeah, I guess I'm still on sideline watch for how they handle things, but I think it did seem a little bit better. I think without a doubt, being home helped USC.
Yeah, for sure.
Still trying to
one
give
or two more, and then
YouTube some love. Justin says, do you think Vaughns and Pittman have good chemistry with JT? JT and Amon-Ra clearly have good chemistry, and I think he and Bayless are usually on the same page as well. But what about our two vets?
For
chemistry between JT and Pittman and Vaughn.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about that at the top of the show. It's definitely better, and I think for this offense to be good, it had to be improved. I was a little surprised as they were that first game. I mean, they were just not on the same page at all. Like it was, to the point where Vaughns didn't start this last game, but now he'll be the starter again, and it'll be fine. I think they're doing a lot better on that front, and he's kind of had to rely on them, like we said, with no really tight end support. So it's good. It's good to have 3 or 4 guys you feel really comfortable throwing to, and they might get more, but for now you needed those two.
Yeah.
And they didn't have it before, and it seems like it's working now.
Yeah, and when you talk to the players, they say that they didn't have a lot of time to get that established during practice and during camp. And that's something I asked Clay Helton. I said, no matter who the starter is it going to hurt your starter that they only had a certain amount of reps, first-team reps, with a couple of guys? And, of course, Helton shrugged that off. But, I mean,
it's fine.
They're saying that. And so you have to wonder how much, if JT had more time, or at least could have came in the spring, if that chemistry could have been established more, how much that would have helped. Let's see. We can do a couple more, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right.
Will Devin Williams play? He is getting some targets. But when you have chemistry issues with your vets, why are you going to put in a guy like Devin Williams, who they don't have that much chemistry in practice? It's not one of the best out of all the wide receivers. So I think when you're in a feast or famine mode with the offense and you need to get things going, I don't think you're going to really put a guy like Devin Williams out there a lot.
Right. No real reason to. You got to, I mean, there's a big list of problems, and then like Devin Williams not playing is not like high a priority of one of the problems.
Yeah. Will we ever have Dan Weber on the show?
Yeah, we should. I mean, it's tough. Like, we asked Dan to do a lot, and for him to drive up from Tustin on Sunday night, I think it would be tough, especially because the Clay Helton conference calls at 6. But yeah, we can have Dan on. We have podcasts, instant analysis, all this kind of stuff. We thought we'd do a little something different for this, but being in studio, it's Keely's driving quite a ways. Shotgun works over it. It's close by now for the LA Times, so it makes it a little bit easier for that. Like Max Brown, I mean, he's local, so he's in Hermosa Beach, so that would be easier to try to get people that are kind of close by. Like Colin Coward lives in Manhattan Beach, so I had him come over, and we did that show before.
Ron says, I came in late. Has Keely apologized yet for predicting a Washington State loss? It was close. It's not like USC blew out Washington State. And if I talked to you, Ron, at halftime, did you think USC was going to win? I don't think so.
People were like, yeah, there was a lot of upset people. Like, we got voicemails from halftime. I'm done with this team and blah blah blah. And USC comes back and pulls out the win. But yeah, I predicted the score. Well, I said 3-point win for USC, that they win barely but not cover, and I got that right. USC 0-4 against the spread and it's the opening line for USC Arizona. I think USC's favored by 3.5, so they win by a field goal again. They would not cover again.
We'll see. Okay, last question from Eddie. He says, do you consider this season to be over since we're not going to the playoffs? And that's a general question of USC fan expectations. Of course, you want your team to do the best, but is the season necessarily over because playoff is kind of out of the picture?
No, I don't think this season's over. I think it's a very important season for Clay Helton, and I think it's important for JT Daniels. You're going to see him around for another couple of years, developing that and getting better. And I think, it could be important to reshaping this coaching staff one way or another with some assistants, or, if the team does poorly and they decide to make a change, I think all of it, there's a lot that's going to be riding on this season besides, not making the playoff. I think getting another run again, maybe getting a shot at playing Washington in a championship game, beating Khalil Tate and beating Herm Edwards at Arizona State, a resurgent Cal team. I think there's a lot of things you can still do this season without, going to the playoff.
Do you think expectations were maybe set a little too high because of the hype that JT Daniels came in with?
No, I think if you don't expect to go to the playoff, then I don't know what you do. I think it's like this was a pretty veteran team, much deeper on defense. There were, it seemed like everything was in place around a quarterback, and you got a really good quarterback. So, there's no excuse that the offensive line has played as poorly as it has. I think, talent-wise, they're as talented as anybody they play. So, no, you should be able to win more games and make a playoff with this team. And that's why I think fans are upset. It's not like they feel like the team is not as, they're just, Stanford just had way better players. Like, no one said that. Did you go to Texas and go, Texas had way better players? No. So, if you don't have better players, then you should win. So, yes, I don't think the expectations were too high.
One last question. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Wondering where Palaie Naoteote is as far as depth chart, and why not use Levi Jones over John Houston?
John Houston had, I think, like 10 or 11 tackles in the game. Clay Helton praised him. They like him a lot. I know some people get on that or whatever, like he looks like a safety, blah, 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 whatever. But I think he's doing a pretty good job of what he's been asked to do. I'd love to see Levi Jones play more because I like he's a real athletic kid. And I don't know what it's going to mean for Palaie because you're, behind Porter Gustin, who basically plays the whole time, right? Or, if he's out, it's because of a different package or something. So I'm not sure if we're going to see him be a part of the rotation. It seemed like they backed off the rotation stuff that they were doing early on, but we'll see. I think it's great that he gets to start and he gets to play there.
That's at least a positive sign because you don't see guys just starting. Of course, Porter was out, but usually they don't go true freshmen, especially when he was injured to begin with. Usually USC's pattern, Palaie getting named a starter that early was not in the pattern.
No, but they like him a lot. I think Bruce
really
Feldman reported that too when he was covering the Stanford game. He talks to the coaches. That was one thing he came away with. They really like him, so that's why you're seeing him out there. He's someone that they really, really think is good.
Mm-hmm. All right. We are almost going an hour and a half, so I think it's time to wrap it up. That's Ryan Abraham. I'm Keely Eure. We'll see you guys on Thursday. We'll be back at noon previewing USC's matchup with Arizona. But that's going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya. Thanks so much.